So there I was. I was looking through my Steam library trying to find a game to make a video on. Grinding's gotta keep rolling. But then, it hit me. See, I told my friend a while back that I was gonna make a video on a certain game, and I wasn't really looking forward to it. But I told myself that I'd commit to it. And that game was The Coffin of Andy and Lele. Wait a minute. Isn't that the incest game? And you'd be right. It is the incest game. But how do we know if we really don't play it? You know what I mean? Like, it could be not as bad. I haven't heard anything about it other than the incest. Have you? Fuck, this is... Oh, the argument's falling apart at the seams. For those who don't know, The Coffin of Andy and Lele is a video game developed in RPG Maker by a person going by Nemle and published by Kit9 Studios. The game has 4 chapters, although only 2 of them are playable right now. The 3rd chapter is set to release sometime this year, and the devs have even planned to do a devlog at the start of every month. Now, it may sound weird to do a review of sorts on a game that isn't even finished yet, but seeing how this game is releasing in chapter-based segments, I'd say it's more than fair game, so long as it's not about plot points that have the potential to still go somewhere later down the line. Although, before we get into the meat of the game itself, there is something that we do need to talk about. You see, normally when I make these videos, I like to be very jovial and happy, whether it's drunk talking about dating sims late into the night, or playing a fun game with the boys. I make these videos to be entertaining and fun, but this video is going to be just a little bit different. I joked about it in the opening bit, but this game does have some serious topics, most namely incest. And while I can't comment on the opinions of said topic on anyone on the dev team, what I can comment on was the reaction to said topic. Unless a piece of media is horribly offensive to a group and serves no historical or artistic value, I personally think that it deserves to exist. And to dox a creator for trying to make a piece of art, especially a piece of art that hasn't even been completed yet, is downright atrocious. This game may not be for everyone, and in a few moments I'll go back to being more joking and even poke fun at some of the incestuous moments myself. But please, for those of you with the head on your shoulder, it is never, ever okay to dox a creative for trying to just make art. Thank you for listening, and let's get into the game itself. We start off with what seems to be a flashback to introduce the titular Andy and Lele mid-argument. We don't get to hear the full conversation now, but we will in due time, so we'll get back to that. For now, can we talk about how it sounds like the music is just saying fuck repeatedly? Lele, I don't want to. It just sounds like the music's saying fuck. We cut to Ashley waking up, starving from months of being locked in her apartment with her brother Andrew. She looks around the house scavenging for food until she finds a can of tomatoes in their pile of garbage, hidden explicitly by her brother to try and spread out their food as efficiently as possible. It's also here that we meet the antagonist of the chapter, the Warden. It's made very clear from these opening minutes that our protagonists have been trapped in this space for quite a bit, and that this antagonistic warden is not supplying them with food or care. Time passes and the siblings check in on their neighbor because of some strange music coming from their apartment. Turns out, it's a cultist trying and failing to summon a demon. How fun. I suppose now is as good a time as any to bring up the art style of the game. The character portraits are incredibly well done, and these scenes where it shows something in almost like a photograph are wonderful as well. That being said, both Andrew and especially Ashley have basically 2 modes, apathetic and fucking horny. Like, you would not believe how often this face is used for Ashley. Like, a lot. And not in places where it's even meant to be suggestive, but just anywhere. If she's not completely uninterested in the topic at hand, she'll be looking at Andrew like Lynryd Skynyrd is hosting a concert in her mind. But this game does have a toilet you can spam, so I can excuse Ashley's shenanigans for now. For now. Hey, real quick, if you're liking this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'm working to do a lot more videos in 2024, and I really think you'll like what's in store. So, yeah, thanks for watching, and let's get back to the video. Back to the game itself, we find some batteries so we can watch the greatest anime of all time. Forget this. Isn't it almost time they let us watch TV? Television? Oh boy. Hope One Piece is on. But the only channel we get is Fox telling us that the water is turning the frogs gay. The duo aren't buying what the media's selling, so we head off to bed to have a dream about the events that led up to their imprisonment. And honestly, it's really depressing. For as much as I'm not too much a fan of this game's sense of Tumblr edge comedy, the more dramatic moments hit really well. Watching Ashley's mother begging her to never call again and being entirely uncaring, it's pretty brutal. It's a really well done scene that adds a lot of not only background to the story, but to the personalities of our duo. Of course Andrew and Ashley have grown increasingly apathetic as their situation grows dire. No one seems to give a damn about them to begin with other than each other. A bit of time passes and the neighbor is playing their dumb music again, so we go check it out. We see that the cultist did summon a demon, to unexpected results. My lord, thank you. Perish. Jaeger, despite witnessing a demon kill a guy, actually just wants to shut off the cultist's trash music taste, so we break in and turn off the CD player. And it's here where we encounter the first of many divisive topics. Topics? And it's here where we encounter the first of many divisive topics. Cannibalism. And honestly, the game sets it up pretty well. Andrew is very uncomfortable with the idea, and Ashley is more concerned about her survival than anything else. I really empathize with Andrew in this situation, and honestly can't say if they made the right decision. The situation they're in is dire, and with no food, they wouldn't be surviving more than just a few days at most. All that being said, it's here where we get to see a better glimpse into the kind of person our playable character Ashley really is. I mentioned earlier that Ashley was mostly focused on her survival, and while that remains true, how she reacts to the situation is really cold. She still looks chipper and even teases about the cannibalism, trying to imply that the idea originally came from Andrew. And in another scene, she just jovially puts a bag on the neighbor's head to keep it covered. Should I use 2 bags? She's kind of got a point. Her reaction as a whole is just unsettling. But I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be. More on that later. After a hearty meal that Ashley forces Andrew to keep down, we head off to bed and get to see a flashback to that argument from the opening scene of the game. We get to see Andy and Lele having a conversation about one of Lele's friends having a crush on Andy. While he doesn't really seem to care or seem anything wrong with it, Lele has a very different response to the situation. She twists Andy's arm into inviting this girl to a warehouse and trapping her in a box. And before I go any further in this flashback, I want to talk about the characters in it as well as the framing of the scene itself. The reason why I'm calling the characters Andy and Lele instead of Andrew and Ashley is not only because the game itself addresses them as such, but because it serves to create a sort of dichotomy between how they were as children and how they are now as adults. Lele changes the least, in my opinion. She's very dependent on Andy and twists his words and actions into serving her own needs, like a brat whose parents never tried to correct their behavior. This isn't so dissimilar to how we find her as Ashley, except now she's reveling in her actions more than as a child. Andy, on the other hand, I find to be a bit more interesting. While Andrew had a girlfriend, speaks out more against Ashley, and feels more like he's trying to be independent, Andy's none of that. He's very passive and is more willing to go along with Lele's antics, and I feel that's very important. But add that to the list of things we'll get to later, because there's a very specific point at the end of this chapter that I think ties everything together beautifully. As for the framing of the scene itself, I want you to remember how we got to this flashback. It's in Ashley's dream. And how is the scene being portrayed? Not with that pink haze we saw in the last flashback, but as a photograph, as something to be held dear to one's heart and cherished, to always be remembered. This is because, at the end of the dream, Layla and Andy go through with her plan to put this girl in the box, and while Andy wants to let her out, Layla throws a fit and throws out an ultimatum to her brother. The girl, or her. Manipulative little bastard. Andy, being a big wussy baby, chooses Lele and they keep her in the box. And it's here where we see why this memory is so cherished by Ashley. In her mind, and even in her own words later, he chose her. This was the first definitive time that he chose her in a way that felt meaningful to her. This gives us a deeper insight into how Ashley, even today, views her relationship with Andrew. She's incredibly codependent, willing to do whatever it takes to keep the person she loves most by her side. But back in the waking world, the siblings have run into a bit of a snag. The warden notices their neighbor's gone silent and decides to check in on him. Ashley hides in the closet, where the warden ends up discovering her. And thanks, Andy. Andrew kills the warden, which Ashley's again very calm and joking about, but for now, this means that the duo have an escape. The warden had a key on him, and the two move for the door, but not before Andrew stops right before the door opens. He confronts Ashley about her lackadaisical approach to everything they've done thus far, and wants to make sure that nothing gets out. After a bit of back and forth with some genuinely good dialogue, the two make their way outside into the hall and escape. It's here where I wish the chapter would have ended, because the rest doesn't really add much to the story as a whole, except for two scenes which I'll discuss instead of going over everything. The first happens after the duo hold a different neighbor at knife point to get the second warden to the cultist room to sacrifice to the demon. It's here where said demon gives Ashley a trinket that's supposed to give her clairvoyant dreams. This becomes more relevant in the second chapter of the game, but I felt it important to mention it now rather than later. The second scene follows just a little bit after the demon scene, where Ashley returns to Andrew, who was holding the neighbor hostage, only to find out that she's dead. Apparently, Andrew let her go, not thinking he would need to hurt her or keep holding on. He was then offered the JC treatment, which he refused by attacking her first. Ashley accuses him of doing something incredibly perverse, to which he adamantly denies. This argument comes to a head when Ashley tells Andrew that his priority should be her over everything else. And it's here where we find out that she has an extensive history of digging into his love life, even causing the breakup of Andrew and his now ex-girlfriend, justifying it as weeding out a quitter. And somehow that's the most tame part of it all. She has a mental breakdown over Andrew's growing independence, pointing out all of his flaws that she helped contribute to while absolving herself of all guilt. It's at this point that Andrew wraps his hands around Ashley's neck and threatens to choke her out. But she calls his bluff. Andy tries talking to himself into killing her, but he just can't. And it's here where those "we'll get back to it" sections come to fruition. This scene shows exactly how much power Ashley holds over her brother. From her unsettling attitude to her outbursts, it's all just ways of keeping Andrew in line and with her. She's like this because their sibling codependency is built on her shitty attitude and Andrew's willingness to go along with it, which is where we go to my second point. This scene, despite Andrew quite literally saying that he wants Andy and Lele to be left behind and die in the apartment, shows the opposite. He just killed two people and let his sister be after both of them acknowledged how she'll act out in the future. That's not Andrew. That's Andy. And that's why the title of the game is what it is. It's not the coffin of Andrew and Ashley. It's the coffin of Andy and Lele. Ashley doesn't want Andy and Lele to die. She still sees him as Andy, the codependent brother that chose her over the world. And in that, I think it's tragic. This chapter did a lot to set up the rest of the game. It introduced the characters, the world, and the situation very well. And this chapter, while having some very strange, flirty-esque moments, never really felt like anything leaning towards proper incest. But maybe chapter 2 will change things. You'll have to see next week though, where we'll be diving deeper into the strange world of this game. If you have any recommendations for any other games you'd like to see, leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to check it out. For now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.